want to, while we're waiting to resume our coverage of the news conference, I want to bring in Gregg Schlesinger and Rick Slider, a structural engineer, president of Slider Engineering. And Gregg, you're here with me. We're watching all of this unfold. It's taking a long time, but what goes through your mind when you hear these numbers? 150 people still unaccounted for, 11 confirmed deaths.
A tragedy. Hard to imagine, just a tragedy.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it?
It is. And from, looking at this building and all the telltale signs, in the Miami Herald, within the last hour, photographs were shown that were within 2 days taken underneath this pool, and the beams are spalled out. The steel has been degraded to a point where it's not in any structural capacity. And the slab, they have photos of the slab that has deformation. Now the question is whether that slab was tied into the rest of the building. That's something that the engineers are going to be looking at immediately to see whether or not it was frangible, to see if that caused or contributed to cause this building collapse.
We have that reporter joining us on the phone right now from the Miami Herald with the pictures showing this damage at the Surfside condo taken by a contractor only 36 hours before it collapsed. CNN has independently reached out about the report, and a spokesperson for the Champlain Towers South Condo Association declined to comment. But let's talk with one of the reporters who actually broke the story. Sarah Blasky is joining us right now on the phone. Sarah, so tell us about what this pool contractor was stunned by seeing on the site here. What exactly did he tell you?
The way this contractor described the situation is when he first entered the building, it looked fine. The pool area looked fine, the upper lobby looked fine, and then he walked into the basement and he saw a bunch of standing water. This is the basement garage under the pool deck. Saw a bunch of standing water and then entered the pool equipment room where he saw cracks in the concrete, everything that was just described, that rebar, degraded concrete, and thought, wow, why haven't they maintained this building better? And he took a picture of that concrete to send to his boss because he was there to do a little bit of cosmetic stuff to the pool. But he thought, wow, this is going to be a bigger job, took a picture, sent it to his boss, and that's the picture, one of them that you're seeing here that we published just a couple of hours ago.
It's really such a graphic and devastating picture, Sarah. The issues that he found just days before the collapse of this building actually mirrored the warning that was concluded back in 2018 in that report, right?
Well, actually, what I understand from experts is that these photos may even be worse than the photos or what was described in the 2018 report. But there's an important caveat here. These photos are taken in the equipment room, which is on the south side of the basement structure. What caved was actually on the north side. The building came down on the north side, and so the part where you see these photos is not immediately in the collapse zone. It is unclear if they would have contributed to the collapse. We understand that they could have, the way that the building is shaped. However, they did not collapse in the same way. Still, experts are telling us if other parts of the building or other parts of the structure down there looked the same way as those photos in the pool equipment room, then certainly that could have contributed to that collapse.
Is the fear, Sarah, that these issues were pervasive, perhaps in other parts of the building as well?
That is the fear. If it's by severe structural damage or severe damage to the structural slab, which is the phrase that was used in that 2018 report, if by that the engineer meant something like what we saw in this picture today, then certainly that kind of damage under the pool deck, which is closer to that northern side of the building, that could have contributed to the collapse. And the fear is that maybe that's what's going on. It is still unclear, however, and it's important to note that chemicals from the pool can make that degradation of the concrete and the rebar worse. And so it is possible that this was an isolated really bad situation, and that maybe the other rebar wasn't as bad. We just don't know yet.
Yeah, excellent reporting, Sarah Blasky. Thank you so much for that. You and your colleague Aaron Leibowitz in the Miami Herald. These pictures 36 hours before that condominium went down, and we see these pictures. They are so disturbing. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for the reporting.
Thanks for having me.
You know, Gregg Schlesinger is still with us. You were mentioning this report in the Miami Herald. You just heard her report. What do you think?
More evidence coming in. We couple that with that 2018 report where we see a column that the steel is eroded, it's spalled out, the structural integrity is gone. My continuing concern is in 2018, what additional inspections did they do? On that one column, they could have put up post shores, removed the concrete around it, and see how bad it was. To see the surface rust, to see the concrete and the structural integrity gone, they should have looked further. They should have looked inside the envelope of the building. They should have removed drywall. Look at the beams. Look at the structural slabs. We see from this reporter raised a concern with those photographs 2 days beforehand that the structural slab was compromised. That was reported in 2018. Nothing was done to look. Demo work. Additional investigation up and down this state. I've built buildings, I've renovated buildings, I've restored concrete from Dade County all the way up to Martin County. These buildings on the ocean, once I start probing, once I start knocking back, man, it's amazing what I see, and it's much worse when I generally start getting into these slabs and into these columns. They need a lot more work, but without the investigation, we have a serious problem.
I want to get reaction from Rick Slider as a structural engineer who's joining us right now. What do you think, Rick?
Actually, it's interesting. The photographs, I did review those from the Herald. Those photographs show significant corrosion of the steel. In part, it could be because of the chlorides in the pool. And also, if you remember the 2018 report, the engineer identified that the waterproofing system failed. They were getting an abundance of water. And in fact, I think part of the recommendation was that there were significant structural damage and that those areas would have to be replaced in their entirety. So even though that area may have been on the south side of the pool deck, based upon the information provided in the 2018 report, it's likely that those same conditions prevailed on the other side. And that area in the photograph on the south side of the pool deck is a support portion for the slab. I think the other issue that Gregg mentioned was, I did review the structural drawings that were obtained from the building department, and there are no expansion joints. So in essence, the pool deck level is contiguous with the building. So if part of the pool deck level fails, it has impact upon the structural integrity of the building also, which appears to have happened.
You want to weigh in, Gregg?
Yeah, Rick, you're right on that. So as soon as I saw that, he mentioned it. Today we have frangible, we have expansion joints. It doesn't tie into the building so that when it structurally fails, you have a pulling out, a force being exerted. So Rick, looking at those drawings, yeah, that's going to be seriously considered and weighed whether that was cause or contributing cause.
When you see that 11-second video of part of the building going down, then another after 5 seconds, another part of the building going down, Rick, where does that fit in your analysis of how this potentially might have happened?
If you look at the video, it's very catastrophic. But if you look at the beginning point, it appears that that's on the, I'll say, the intersection of the pool deck with the building to the right side. And you'll see it is very vertical. I think one of the other reports had identified that. That's telling me that that is a column at the base level that has failed. Potentially could be some impact by the pilings. That's not, obviously won't be confirmed until sometime the investigators are able to assess that. But obviously there is a column or a vertical support component in that building that was, in my opinion, is the initiation point of the failure. Again, the photographs in the report of 2018 identified some very significant structural deterioration, exposed reinforcing steel. Those kind of elements really should have been repaired within close proximity and time to the filing of that report. Now, obviously, we're now 3 years later.
So, Gregg, the way the building went down, and we've all seen the video,
Sure.
What does that say to you about why potentially this might have happened?
Well, we know there was a structural failure. Where it started, why it started, we know the columns that are at the base support the building. We know that they were structurally compromised. There's also another issue, and I think Rick has pointed to it, whether or not we have subsidence, whether or not the building was creating forces by lowering down into those pilings in the ground. Why was it subsiding? What were the problems? Soil core borings down into the base rock would tell us what was going on. Maybe it needed additional pilings, pin pilings, pressure injected grout. So those are telltales. We look at the way it went down, that indicates something failed. We know the columns failed, the building pancaked upon itself. So failure analysis experts will come in and make that determination, also material science experts.
You know, Rick, as we watch this, you've said that the issues that were identified in the 2018 report clearly led to this disaster. The vice mayor of Surfside, Florida, just told CNN that the report reads like a standard inspection report. So what's your analysis? What do you think?
It's interesting. Some of the language in the report identifies structural distress. To me, and there are a couple of photographs of the slab which show significant concrete loss and corrosion reinforcing steel. From a structural engineering standpoint, we assess the magnitude of the cracks, the amount of concrete that's broken, the amount of corrosion of the steel. All those are indicators of a level of distress. So the report and the language does indicate areas of distress and, in fact, full replacement of pieces of the concrete. However, other parts of the report, and in particular they talk about columns, they show a picture of a column, but it shows damage, but not really to the level that's described in the report. So some of the reports are a little inconsistent as to the actual finding, and but it does say ultimately the slabs of distress do need to be replaced in their entirety, which is a significant issue, and those areas of the garage need to be repaired.
There certainly, Rick, seems to have been a lack of urgency in addressing these safety issues over the past 3 years or so. How concerned should South Florida residents be right now about the safety of other very, very similar buildings, and there are a lot of them up and down the coast?
I'll say one of the other factors that comes to play here is typically when these kind of surveys are done, they are required by Miami-Dade.
All right.
A structural engineer
Rick,
goes
hold
out
on
and
one
does an
second.
assessment.
Hold that thought for a minute. They're beginning to answer questions at the news conference. I want to listen in again.
Very small.